I quit modeling in Brazil right after the most successful period I've ever had. I worked with Vasco da Gama, whose team told me that Nike had recommended me. I filmed a tennis campaign connected to the Rio Open, and I've joined the biggest production I've ever worked on. So I quit when things finally started working, because I realized I was building the wrong career. And before this becomes too dramatic, I'm not saying that I will never accept another modeling job. If an interesting brand invites me tomorrow, I'm definitely gonna say yes. What I'm quitting is the attempt to turn traditional modeling into a serious long-term career. And to explain why, we need to go back to my very first modeling job, when I was booked for a Powerade commercial and then completely removed from it. If you mainly know me from my videos about living in Brazil, you may not even know that I've also been working as a model and an actor. It has never been my main source of income. I still make most of my living as a video editor, but modeling and acting became this strange second career that occasionally gave me some really good and genuinely amazing experiences. And sometimes I got completely deleted from the final product. My first ever modeling job happened literally the day after I was accepted by an agency. It was a commercial for Powerade. Obviously, I thought, okay, I joined an agency yesterday and today I'm already filming a Powerade commercial. This modeling thing is going to be easy, and it was not. So I went to the shoot, filmed my segment, and waited to see the finished advertisement. But during post-production, the commercial changed and my entire part was removed. Not even shortened, removed, completely cut. I watched the final version and I simply wasn't there. And so that was my introduction to the modeling and advertising industry. You can attend the casting, get selected, spend an entire day filming and do everything correctly and good, and still disappear from the final edit. But the interesting part was that being removed didn't affect my payment at all. I received everything we had agreed on, and for reasons I still don't completely understand, the final payment was actually even higher than I expected. So technically I was paid more to appear less. Well, in this case, not appear at all, which honestly is not the worst business model. That experience immediately taught me not to connect the final edits with my quality of work. Campaigns changed, clients changed their minds, scenes get removed. Sometimes it has absolutely nothing to do with you. After that, I continued doing different commercials and clothing campaigns. Most of them were for small and Brazilian brands, and some of those brands contacted me directly. Often they were looking for someone with a slightly different or more international look. And I genuinely enjoyed those shoots. I met great people, got some very good photos, and learned how different every production can be. So one of my favorite commercial jobs was for a real estate company that was one of the sponsors of the Rio Open, the tennis tournament. The Rio Open is the biggest international tennis tournament in Brazil and the only ATP 500 tournament in South America. And for this advertisement, I had to play tennis. I already play tennis all the time, so this was basically somebody combining two parts of my life and paying me for it. I got to be on a tennis court, play for the camera, and become part of a campaign connected to one of the biggest sporting events in Rio. It was an excellent job, and it also represented the kind of commercial work that seems to suit me best. I wasn't simply standing still and showing clothes. I was doing something. I was playing a role, even if that role was basically just a guy who plays tennis. It was somewhere between modeling and acting, and that combination would become increasingly important for me. Then there was Vasco da Gama. Vasco is one of Brazil's most historic and widely supported football clubs. It was founded in 1898 and became a South American champion in 1948. So yeah, it was a very cool name to see on a call sheet. My first job with Vasco came through my modeling agency. Somebody else apparently couldn't do the shoot, so the production needed a last-minute replacement. Now, I would love to tell you that I immediately became the face of this huge football campaign, but no, not at all. I was basically in the background. That's me. And this is also me, but with a short on my face. So if you blink, you miss my entire contribution to Brazilian football. I arrived, did my job, met the team, and assumed that was the end of the story. But a few months later, Vasco contacted me again. This time they contacted me directly, without an agency. They were shooting a special Pride collection. And instead of being one of several people somewhere in the background, this campaign was basically just me and one other model. So I was curious and asked them, how did you decide to invite me again. I was just on the background. And the Vasco team told me that Nike had recommended me. For context, Nike is now Vasco's official sports sponsor and kit supplier. And I want to be very precise here. Nike did not hire me for a global Nike campaign. I'm not going to pretend that happened. But according to the Vasco team, Nike had passed my name along. And for somebody who had barely appeared in the previous shoot, hearing that was honestly surreal. It also showed me how important connections and reputation can be in this industry. But a connection doesn't necessarily mean being friends with the famous director or having an important person's phone number. Sometimes a connection is simply somebody remembering that you arrived on time, behaved professionally, and didn't make the production more difficult. You never really know which small job might lead to another. At this point, the perfect YouTube version of this story would be Nike recommended me, my modeling career exploded, and now I'm an international supermodel. The real version is slightly less dramatic. While I continued getting modeling jobs, I was also getting more acting work. Most of those weren't huge roles, but almost all of them were genuinely fun, because instead of only thinking about how I looked in the clothes, I had something to do. I could react to another person, create a character, or become part of a story. And then I joined the biggest production I have personally ever worked on, the 5th season of Arcanjo Renegado. So I want to make an important distinction here. I'm saying it was the biggest production I've worked on, not that I had the biggest role in the series. Arcanjo Renegado is a global play, original, like Brazil and Netflix, made in partnership with Afro Reggae Audiovisual, and its 5th season is currently scheduled to come out in September this year, so like next month. I can't reveal much about my role or what happens yet, but I can tell you that the scale and organization were on a completely different level from anything I had experienced before. We had several filming days in different locations, transportation was organized from my home to the set, there was a huge production team, professional makeup, long shooting, schedules, and many different departments coordinating everything. But I absolutely loved it. There was something incredibly exciting about being one small part of this massive machine creating an entire fictional world. The contrast with my normal life was also ridiculous. One day a production car was picking me up from my home, and on another day I was recording a video about getting robbed in Rio after living here for 5 years. Brazil is very good at keeping your ego under control. I've made a separate video about what it was actually like working on Arcanjo Renegado, so subscribe if you don't want to miss this one. So what about the money? I'm not going to share exact numbers, but in my experience, supporting acting roles and commercial modeling jobs generally pay here in Brazil within a relatively standard range. The rate changes depending on the production, the number of filming days, and how the material will be used. A much bigger production doesn't automatically mean some life-changing Hollywood paycheck. The biggest difference for me was the scale, the experience, and what the job made me realize about myself and realize why I'm quitting modeling. So if I was finally getting better opportunities, why do I decide to say that I'm quitting modeling? The first problem is very simple. I'm 175 centimeters and it's short for modeling. That is not an insecurity, it's simply a measurement. For commercial modeling, especially the kind of jobs I've been doing in Brazil, it isn't necessarily a major problem. I'm literally proof that a man who is 175 centimeters tall can still get paid for modeling work. But I also explored doing what some of my model friends have done, traveling abroad, joining agencies in other countries, and trying to work in international fashion markets. And in most of the traditional men's fashion markets, I looked at agencies and they were looking for models like around 180 centimeters or even taller. Some men in 175 do travel and work, exceptions do exist, yes. Commercial and characters modeling can be much more flexible. So I'm not saying that like every male model must be over 180 centimeters, but at 175 I would begin almost every conversation by asking an international fashion agency to make an exception for me. And height isn't the only challenge. My overall modeling profile isn't the most obvious fit for the Brazilian market either. From the casting briefs I see and the feedback I receive, many clients here are looking for a different type. I'm often considered when a brand specifically wants a foreign or more international look, or simply wants more diversity in its campaign. That can work in my favor. It's probably one of the reasons some Brazilian brands have invited me directly. Being different can make me more memorable, but it also makes the range of jobs available to me much more specific. So I'm in this slightly strange position. I'm too short for a lot of traditional international fashion work, while my profile doesn't naturally fit a large part of the Brazilian commercial market either. That doesn't mean I can't work. Clearly, I have worked, but it means that modeling is a much narrower and less predictable path for me than it might be for someone whose height and profile fit the usual requirements more naturally. Could I push much harder and try to convince agencies? Probably, but I don't see that as a priority anymore, because the jobs I've enjoyed the most are already showing me where I fit naturally. Commercial campaigns, character work, and projects where my personality and performance matter. So why acting makes more sense? With acting, my height and appearance don't magically disappear. They can still affect which roles I'm considered for, but they become characteristics of a person instead of immediate problems on a modeling application form. Acting is not easier, of course not. It's probably even much harder. It requires training, languages, auditions, and the ability to hear no repeatedly without completely losing your mind. But it also makes me want to improve. I've completed an acting course here in Brazil, and now I want to focus much more seriously on acting, training, and auditions. That doesn't mean I'm going to reject every future modeling offer, as I already told you. I enjoy modeling, I enjoy meeting people from the industry, and I'm genuinely grateful for every opportunity I've ever had, and I'm gonna have, I hope. Modeling also isn't my main job, so I have the freedom to enjoy an occasional campaign without forcing it to become my entire career. So what I'm quitting is the chase. I'm no longer trying to measure my success and my height against a traditional modeling career that was never really designed for my measurements or profile. And I don't want to spend years trying to convince an industry that I fit somewhere I probably don't, especially when another path already feels much more natural. So eventually this new focus might take me outside Brazil. I'm currently preparing for the possibility of moving to a country many people associate with the birth of cinema. I'm not going to tell you the name of the country yet, although I'm sure some of you have already guessed it. The idea isn't to arrive there and immediately announce that I'm an international actor. The idea is to study, train, audition in another language, and find out whether I can actually build an acting career in a completely different country. It could be exciting, it could also be a complete disaster. Either way, it should make a very good YouTube content. So this channel is not suddenly abandoning Brazil or tips about Brazil stories. There are still many Brazilian stories I want to tell, but you are also going to see more of this transition from accidentally booking a Powerade commercial in Brazil to seriously trying to become an actor somewhere new. So yeah, I quit modeling as a career in a way, not because I never received opportunities, but because receiving those opportunities helped me understand what I actually wanted and probably needed. So subscribe if you want to see the full Arcanjo Renegado story and the next chapter of my journey. And tell me in the comments which country do you think I'm talking about. See you in the next one.